moving right along today, and we are going to be solving two-step equations. Now, when you're solving an equation for a variable, so that's the goal here, you guys. The goal is to get the variable alone on one side of the equal sign. You cannot stop any of these problems until you have like x equals 5 or w equals -2, whatever. You don't stop until the variable is alone. Okay, to do that, you do the inverse operations of what is being done to the variable on both, and I'm going to put that in all capitals, on both sides of the equal sign. Now, inverse, that just is like another word, a fancy word for like doing the opposite. In other words, like if they're adding, then you should subtract. So like adding and subtracting, those are inverse operations. Multiplying and dividing, just the opposite of each other. Okay, and again, I put it in capital letters because it's important that you keep the equation balanced and you do the same thing on both sides. I want you guys to keep in mind that you can always check your answer when you're solving an equation. So that's really good to note, especially like on a quiz or a test. You could check your answers and make sure you got these right. Okay, so if you're looking at these are all equations that need to be solved using two steps. So if I look at number 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a vertical line through the equal sign. Hopefully you've seen that before. That just shows me like what's on the left side of the equal sign and what's on the right. Okay, that's going to help me keep it balanced, like we kind of put in our second bullet point here. I'm not going to stop until x is alone. So the 2 and the 12 need to move to the other side. Now, we're fresh off of the order of operations. I want you to realize that when you're solving an equation, you do the reverse of the order of operations. Okay, so I want you to make a note of that. It's reverse PEMDAS, and I'm going to highlight that because that's really important. So you're kind of going to work backwards from the order of operations to decide, do I get rid of the 2 or do I get rid of the 12 first? Okay, so adding and subtracting, you undo that first, which I know I'm adding 12 and I'm multiplying 2 to the x. So I'm going to get rid of the 12 first. Okay, so I think do the opposite. I'm adding 12, so I'm going to subtract 12. I'm going to do the same thing on the right side of the equation to keep it balanced. The 12s cancel, and I'm left with just 2x on the left side. Bring your equal sign down, and 6 minus 12 is -6. Now I undo the multiplication and division. So you're multiplying by 2, do the opposite, and I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides, and write it like a fraction like that. 2's cancel, and that gives me just x equaling -3. Okay, so like we said, you can always check your answers. So I'm going to go ahead and do that over here on the right. And I'm going to check it with my calculator, even though I haven't been able to use my calculator on a lot lately. That's okay. So I'm going to go back to the original problem, and I'm going to plug in -3 where x is. And remember, when you plug a number in, you should always use parentheses. I'm going to work out the left side of the equal sign. I'm going to plug it in my calculator exactly like it looks. And what do you know? It equaled 6. Ooh, that's hard to see. If they equal the same number, you checked it, you know you did it right. Okay, on to example 2. Draw your line through your equal sign. I need to do reverse order of operations. So start with addition and subtraction. Think of them together. I see that I am subtracting 2 and I'm multiplying by 3/5 to the w. So I'm going to take care of the -2 first. The opposite of subtracting 2 would be adding 2. Whatever I do on the right, I have to do on the left. Those 2's cancel each other out, and I have 36. Bring down my equals, and I have 3/5 w. Now, for fractions, and maybe we've seen this before, I don't like the fraction. I don't know about you guys, especially if I can't use my calculator. I don't like the fraction. So here's what I do. I take the W and I just bring it to the top with the 3. So I would rewrite this as 3W over 5. And maybe that helps a little bit. As far as the reverse order of operations, this one's kind of weird. If everything's being divided by a 5, you have to get rid of that before you can take care of the 3. So the fraction just means divide. Instead of dividing by 5, I'm going to do the opposite and multiply by 5 on the right and on the left. Okay, those will cancel. And let's see, 5 times 36, 180 equals 3W. Now take care of the 3. You're multiplying, so do the opposite and divide. And I get W equals 60. Okay, so notice I'm just doing the opposite of what's being done to the variable every single time. I'm going to check it, so rewrite the original problem, put in 60 where W was, and I'm just going to plug that in my calculator. So use the ABC for the fraction button. 3/5 parentheses 60 minus 2, 34. All right, on example 3, here's where maybe it gets a little weird. Draw your line. Now, I like to say that you always move what's not connected to the variable first. So like the 2 is connected. Save that for the end and move the 12. The 3/5 was connected. So I moved the 2 first and then the 3/5. This 6 right here is not connected to the K. So I'm going to move that first. Now, here's the mistake people will make. They'll say, oh, this is a subtraction, so I'm going to do the opposite and add. You always have to do the opposite of the sign in front of a number to move it. That is a positive 6. Okay, so I actually have to subtract 6 on both sides to cancel it. 6 minus 6 is 0. That's why they cancel. Okay, so if I look at what's left, there's a negative K left on the left side, and that equals -4. Realize that there's always a 1 that sits in front of every variable that's plain. This one just happens to be a -1. And you're multiplying, so you need to do the opposite and divide by -1. And that will leave me with K equals +4. Okay, so I'm going to plug that in and check it. So 6 minus 4 equals 2. Yep, 2 equals 2. Cool. Example 4, same thing. The 4 is connected to the variable, so I always, and you should too, always move what's not touching H first, which is the 7. And you always do the opposite of the sign in front of something to move it. So since it's a negative, I'm going to add, and those cancel. And I'm left with 4H equals -12. I'm multiplying by 4, so I'm going to divide by 4. And I get H equals -3. To check it, I'm going to plug in, using parentheses, -3 where H was. And let's see, that's -7 plus -12. Yep, that's -19. Notice my work, you guys. It's very organized. It's very clear. I'm showing all of my steps. You need to do the same thing. That's very important in algebra. It helps me see where you're going wrong. It creates more opportunities to get more points on a quiz or a test to show your understanding. Make sure you show your work. All right, last 2. Notice these look very similar, but they are totally different in how you solve them. For example 5, the 3 is touching the M. So I'm going to save that for last, and I'm going to move the 7 first by adding. Okay, now I take care of the 3. I'm dividing by 3, so I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. And I get M equals -9. And let's check it. So let's plug in -9 where the m was and use the order of operations to work out what that equals. -9 divided by 3 is -3. And then -7, that's -10. All right, on this last one, even though it looks real similar to this, I'm not going to start by adding 7. I can't do that. I can't break up the numerator. If everything is being divided by 3, you have to start by multiplying everything by 3. Okay, you've got to get rid of what's on bottom before you can add the 7. So it kind of reversed the steps, which that gets a little confusing. But as long as you remember if everything's being divided, that goes first, you'll be good. Now I add the 7. And this one, I actually get m equals -23. And if we check it, we plug it in. Ooh, to work this out, I take care of the top first. +3. And then I do -30 divided by 3, which is -10.